Thank you very much, Adele. I will start with some quick little introductions. So I'll introduce myself first, and then I'll ask Mark and Anil to introduce themselves. I am Dave Burstein. I'm a principal with PSMJ. It's my pleasure to be chief interrogator at this session today. And so I'll be asking the questions, and Mark and Anil will be providing the answers. So Mark, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Mark Brumfield, HEAPY Engineering, CEO. I've been with HEAPY and really in the AEC industry now for 38 years. And when I'm not CEO, I'm also an electrical engineer. So have a little bit of knowledge in the trade.
Thank you, Mark. Anil?
Yeah, good morning. This is Anil Sivadas. I run Enventure Engineering, and, I started Enventure in 1997. So for the past 25 years, I've been providing resources into the US market. So we primarily provide AEC resources working out of India and servicing customers in the US. I'm also an engineer.
What kind of engineer are you, Anil?
Yeah, so I'm an electronics engineer, but currently working in the AEC domain. So
very good.
I did a career shift in between.
So while we've got you, Anil, tell us a little bit about some of the work you do, exactly what kind of services you provide, who are maybe some of your American and Canadian engineering firms, in addition to Mark's firm that you serve.
Right. So, Enventure, I started Enventure in 97. So ever since then, for the past 25 years, we've been servicing American firms only. So we live in two continents, and since all our customers are in the US and all the engineers are based in India. And AEC is the domain on which we are primarily focused on. And with the current requirement in the market with the labor shortage, a lot of companies like HEAPY have actually used us to build up capacity back in India. So we work with primarily three types of companies. One is the MEP firms like HEAPY Engineering, Mishart Kohli, and a few others. AE firms like Evincor, Harley Elitz, Devro, and also electrical contractors like FTI, Fate Technologies, Gaylor, etc. So it's a whole load of companies which are using us, and we are seeing the usage getting increased day by day. So that's what we do as a profession.
Very good. So let me turn to Mark for a minute. Just tell us a little bit more, Mark, about your firm, your size, where you're located, some of your project types, and in particularly why you thought that offshore outsourcing of some of your activities might be helpful.
Okay. So HEAPY Engineering, we were established in 1945. So in a couple of years, it'll be our 80th year. So we've been around the block for a while. We're headquartered in Ohio. We really do work across the country, but our offices are mostly Midwest, South, Southeast. We kind of sit in the traditional MEP environment. We also have technology. We do building optimization. We also have a construction management arm, and kind of when you wrap that all together, this year will probably gross revenue be about 70 million. We work in healthcare, higher ed, industrial, really, a lot of those markets. And then for us, we're in a really significant growth mode, Dave. And gosh, for the past maybe 5 or 6 years, I've been coming to PSMJ, to the seminars, and to Thrive. We've experienced it, but you also have been talking about this labor environment that we're been in and we're entering in. And so we're in this high growth mode, and the labor is really constrained, and it's really hard to find. So in order to grow, we just didn't want to do that and put numbers out if we didn't have a strategy or strategies on how to kind of support that as we have more offices and more colleagues. So, this offshoring became one of the, extra legs in the hiring stool that we have, that we started to investigate, so that we made sure we could staff as we grew.
So when did you start working with Enventure, and how did you end up selecting them to go with?
So I think it's been more than 4 years. It's interesting. At one point, we had come across an Indian-based MEP firm that was here in the States. And so we were working with them some to try and have them help us with some resources, but it was kind of an interesting relation. They were in the States and they were trying to grow their business, and we were almost to a certain degree kind of like competitors, but they were also trying to help us with some of our staffing needs. And so that was probably not the best model for us. So we kept looking around, and actually one of Anil's colleagues, Girish, we ran into in the US, and they just had a really fascinating story that seemed to answer a lot of the questions or solve some of the roadblocks we were kind of seeing as we were working with this other consulting firm. So 4+ years ago, we kind of started down that path together.
Okay. And so, going back to the beginning, what kinds of services were they providing, and what kind of challenges did you have in the beginning?
Yeah, and I will say in the beginning, it was that traditional MEP role. So we were trying to have them be extensions of our project team. So as projects came in and project managers, and we looked at the resources, they could come and they could provide engineering support. They could provide model manipulation, model creation. They did a lot of, it was really helpful to do a lot of model management, that Navisworks, the conflict analysis. They would be sitting there in real time as we would be working in the US. And then as it went around the world to India, they would look at the models and help us work through conflicts. So it was really that early support role. And then as we've built the relationship, they have really evolved. They do some data mining for us. They provide us some software support. They help us in some Deltec management in different areas. So they kind of have a varied set of skills that, as we built trust through I will say the traditional MEP, we've kind of expanded that over time.
And what were some of the challenges that you had, and how did you overcome them? Or did you overcome them?
Well, yeah, we have. No, I mean, there's in any of this, there's always challenges. I kind of joke, and I think we've all heard it. Change a lot of times for engineers are hard. We like routine. We have the processes and the things that we like, and we don't like that change. So as we brought this group in, building that trust, having the time to spend with both Anil and their colleagues to kind of build up that they were valued colleagues. And really what we wanted to do was have them, again, really be an extension of HEAPY, or be HEAPY colleagues. We were really working hard to not have this be like in the past we'd had some contract employees that they were out there, and when we were done with them, they were gone, and we typically didn't see them anymore. We viewed this, and we were trying to view it as kind of a long-term relationship. So building that stability. And so, Anil's group having to come in, learn where everything was for HEAPY, how HEAPY does things, how do we do Revit. And I'll give them credit, they're very open to that. They said, share with us how you do it. And we will work very hard to really kind of be a seamless component. So that early integration and trust that they could do it. I will say, some of what we had some internal problems, and we battle sometimes with our own internally delegation. So if we struggle there some ourselves, delegating to them was, a challenge. So we had to really work on scope definition. Hey, what are we doing? What are we expecting back? And how much time do they have, like you would for anybody? And so it really also helped us hone our skills a little bit more in project management internally.
Yeah, I think the whole delegation thing is definitely, I can see where that's an issue. Engineers in general have a hard time delegating. It's like, well, nobody can do it as well as I can, so why should I have somebody else do it, right? And then, well, wait a minute, now I'm going to get somebody halfway across the world to do it, and they can't do it as well as I can either. So yeah, I can see where the delegation challenges, especially with engineers, is definitely going to be there.
Sure. And one of the things that we really learned from that, and again, Enventure has been incredible helping us with it, is we didn't think about it at first. It was really just spot help. Hey, we need help now, and we would get, engineering support from them, and then we may not need it for a while, and we would get some different engineers on their end. And that would, again, if you just looked at it on our end, and if our resources were constantly changing on our projects, that's a challenge. So they really did a great job at some point of consistently committing engineering and design support. And we got those colleagues all the time. And that really ramped up the support. And, we knew strengths and weaknesses of both sides. And that really helped, having those defined colleagues that were always going to be available from Enventure side.
Yeah, I can see where that would be very, very helpful if your PMs had to deal with different people every time. I could see where that would be a real challenge.
Yep.
So Anil, is the experience that Mark is talking about typical? How is it with other firms? How's it the same? Maybe how is it different?
Yeah. So when we engage with various customers, people have a lot of problems initially, in sense like they have a lot of background noise, in sense like things which have happened in the past. So some of the few concerns which we come up with is I tried doing this maybe like a few years back, or a friend of mine did this years back and did not work. And the second is India could be a black box. So, the data goes in, I don't know when it will come back. The third, what we have seen is, India has great engineers, but do they know American standards and culture? So how we have always gone out and addressed this. Now, about the first one, which is basically, the previous failure. Enventure, we are experts in sense, we have been doing this for the past 25 years. And we have a very, very watertight process. And we even have built our own ERP system, and to ensure that American customers get what they want. So if you see, all about outsourcing is basically the communication channel. Technology exists in India and in the US, but then really wants to build the bridge and then let the technology move is really what is most important. So we are experts in that, to understand like what somebody like HEAPY needs, and then how do you deliver that from India on a watertight basis. So that's one point. The second point is, even the base technology is improved from the past. So today we have BIM 360, we have collaboration, we have got Teams, we've got Zoom, we've got VoIP, all of that. So virtually we are living in the similar kind of world. So in the past, so when I started in 97, we had very narrow, I was just telling Mark, like when we started, it was the T1 line, which was like great in the US, and we had much lower speeds in India, So imagine pushing a model through that would have been nightmare. And there was no screen share, there is no, So a lot of experiences people come up with is really from the past, when the technology was really, miles behind. Today's technology, I think, is really out there to actually accentuate the point that the world is flat. So technology helps, and our process also helps. And this process is built over all the experiences, of doing this for 25 years. And you can imagine when you do it for 25 years, whatever can go wrong has gone wrong, and whatever has gone right has gone right, and we have learned from that, So, and we are still here. So it's a testimony that, something we have done right over time. So well, that's one.
I know there's a lot of other outsourcing engineering firms in India and other places that aren't still here. So it definitely is a testament to the fact that 25 years later you are. By the way, I have a few more questions, but I forgot to mention during the introduction that if anybody who's in the audience has any questions, please put them into the Q&A box, and Adele will read the questions when we're done. Or if you want, we'll open it up after my questions are done, and you could either ask your questions via chat, or Adele, maybe we can even ask them live in video. But let me keep going. So, one of the things that I've heard is a concern is data security and sharing, some of the trade secrets and best practices that Mark and HEAPY had come up with and don't really want to expose to their competitors. And so how do you deal with, and I know security is a big one because you got data breaches and ransomware attacks and all kinds of things. So how do you deal with those things?
Right. So, on one side, contractually we cover through non-disclosures between the two companies, and Enventure to its employees are also covered under, non-disclosures. And India has a very strong IT, Information Technology Act, which can protect the IP rights for any company. So if you see companies like Meta or Microsoft, large amount of their work happens in India. So, it's for the Indian government to make sure that, the data rights are protected and it's enforceable based India. So that's the legal part of it. Now, when it comes to Enventure, we actually put all of these in different buckets. And since the teams sit separate, they don't share, anything between themselves. We are also bound by, so we are also certified under ISO 27001, which is basically the information security certification, and that is done by DNV, and they audit all our systems. And then so we have our internal audits, and then there are also external audits by DNV certifiers, and then we always provide certificates to our customers. Now, the other thing what we also have is we also build these center of excellences. Like, for instance, for HEAPY, we have a center of excellence based out of our office. So that's like HEAPY's office inside our office. So that's bound by, we have face scan, and only with the face scan you can come inside. It's also got a security camera through which, which is also visible for the HEAPY staff if they want to check what's going on within this. It's fully branded as HEAPY. The employees wear HEAPY Enventure t-shirts, and there is also a dedicated pipeline which connects the two offices. So, we tunnel, there's an IP tunnel through which the data goes up and down. So it's virtually like creating your own office in, inside Enventure. So we employ about 350 people, but then there are these COEs which have actually, are directly connected to the customer. So for a mid-size company which cannot directly come to India, we offer that as a solution. So that's how we manage to make sure that security is very, very good, and there is no, from one team to the other, it's a Sicilian code of silence, because we end up dealing with multiple companies. So we make sure that is part of our DNA.
So, Mark, from your perspective, how has that been working out over the past few years for HEAPY?
It's certainly worked incredibly well. We have, we do work for the federal government, and we have these agencies that have, the security needs, and so, we're able to set aside a part of our cloud that they have access to, so that they're getting in and out of that, and and we can keep it segregated. But I think this is important for everybody. What Anil talked about, and again, what attracted us so much, is we spent a lot of time looking for a partner based upon kind of our culture, our purpose, vision, mission, and core values. And so when Enventure came along, before we even started talking any business, we wanted to understand who they were, how they operated, all these things, these centers of excellence, what was their business model. We really wanted it to match, because if it doesn't, and we've told our colleagues this is the why we're going down that path, they're going to quickly see the disconnect and say, well, Mark says this, but they're really doing it for this reason. And again, Enventure has done they're a fantastic organization. We kind of really matched very well culturally. We wanted someone who was a great employer over in India, and it was great colleagues and took care of them. And they did that so that as we kind of built these extra layers on, it really has become kind of a long-term strategic component of what we look at. And just like Anil said, we view Enventure over there for us as our India office. And when you do that over time, that really helps that buy-in again, and folks see it very differently.
Okay. Well, we've talked about, your start with HEAPY and what you've been doing initially. What's your view about how to use HEAPY today and going into the future? Any differences, or are you pretty much going to be doing things the same way you've been doing them?
So we still have a lot of growth. We're still expanding rapidly, and we know we have that. Again, we see these obstacles in the future for how many engineering students are going to be out there. So we really do view Enventure as part of kind of that long-term plan and how they're going to help fill part of that role. So we really don't see it changing. It's really, how is it going to grow and evolve? And I will say one other thing that we did as well to help is we didn't have an internal mechanism. So we have all of these practices, kind of these different business units, and we were really struggling on how to get the information to Enventure. And so between the two of us, we ultimately decided to bring one of their colleagues over, and they sit in one of our offices. And so all of our kind of coordination with what's going on in India flows through Pradeep in the HEAPY office. And that has been really helpful and organizing. And again, just shows to me how much Enventure is willing to morph and change to kind of meet our needs versus us having to change our structure. They change some of theirs to help us.
So let's talk just for a minute about the impact of using Anil's folks in India on project budgets and schedules. So from a schedule standpoint, I guess there's a couple of different things going on. Number one, they can work while you sleep, right? Because
right.
Yep. Differences. But number two, it's very difficult to communicate, and because of the time zone differences. So let's talk about that schedule issue first, and then we'll talk about budget. So what's been the overall impact on schedule?
So there's just a lot of flexibility. As we all know in this industry too, we get design and construction is a very dynamic environment. Things are moving around and changing all the time. And a lot of times those aren't even in our control. We're reacting. And to try and go out, if you had things change or you won a large project and you had to ramp up quickly, if we're just relying on our internal resources or trying to go out and hire, we're going to be unsuccessful. So on scheduling and trying to win work and work that comes in that was unexpected, there's now kind of an on-demand resource that allows us to scale up very quickly to meet our needs. And we have a base component we engage. When that needs to scale back down, it does with us. So on that scheduling, it really gives us a lot of flexibility. And again, they do a great job of having overlap with us in the morning and the evening. So it isn't kind of this surprise that we get. We actually have an ability to interact when we need to, especially something that's going very quick or is very time sensitive. We kind of look at what they did and versus what we sent. And so, that engagement on a daily basis is very helpful.
Let's talk about budget for a minute. So you also have a couple of competing factors going on there. Number one, I presume that their hourly rates are somewhat lower than yours in the U.S. But then on the other hand, just because of the distance and other differences, the productivity may not be quite as high. So overall, what have you seen in terms of budget performance when your project managers use Anil's folks versus when they do it in the States entirely?
Yeah, Dave, that's a great point. At first we had, times some redo, and even we have that now. If something wasn't properly scoped or we had to send it out quick, they're doing their best to give it to us. And so sometimes there are these iterations you go through. So that cost difference allows us to work through those iterations and get what we want, knowing that we aren't going to break the budget. And so that does help us. Again, we can know, because even, I mean, if we were going to try and hire experienced colleagues off the market right now, we know how expensive that is, how much it takes to pry good people away. And then when you get them in, it takes a while for them to even be productive in your office. So from a budget point of view, to be able to have this in and have it still have some iterative, it is certainly, you know, neutral to positive on a budget. I will say, though, really think about your why. That wasn't our why, because some of the colleagues will look at that and they'll be worried, kind of like artificial intelligence. Hey, this is my swan song. I can see this tidal wave coming, and you know, we're heading down this path where this is what we want to do. That was absolutely not the case. You know, Enventure is a component. We tell them what component it is, and you know, but we still want all of our colleagues. We're still heading down this path, but this is an economical way to get work done when we can't find ways to do it elsewhere. So,
okay. Well, we have a number of firms on participating on this little webinar, and I suppose that the reason they're participating is they have some level of interest in this. Any words of advice to people who haven't done it but are kind of interested in wanting to, you know, what to expect?
Yeah, you know, we've gone through some of those things. Certainly, and Anil brought this up. Cultural. So they are different cultures. And so taking that into account, and as you're doing it, again, have a very focused why and have your company know, and then work with Enventure on the why, so that they're aligned, so that we're, you know, what we're doing and what we're bringing is important. I would say then that communication for a while is a challenge. So we invested in a colleague sitting over in the US to help us. Probably it's not a long-term solution, but it was really short-term. Another thing that Anil mentioned, they're ISO certified. We are as well. And so what really works well too is when we give them feedback. So understand things aren't going to go right at times. Whatever occurs, either we gave poor instructions, they misunderstood, you know, you're going to have these disconnects. Again, a great thing they do by being ISO certified, they're really good at that process improvement. And they take the feedback very quickly, and we see the change very quickly. So don't be afraid. We had some pockets where we would give them work. What we got back, they figured to be subpar, that I could get it done better inside the company, and then they don't use them again. But they don't tell Enventure what the issues were. And so, you know, there's no way they can improve it if they don't hear it. And so we have to be comfortable, you know, and for anybody who wants to use it, be comfortable providing that feedback, because they do a great job of absorbing it. And then also they say, hey, here's what's hard with working, you know, with you guys right now. Can you help this? This is where our group's struggling. So they give us feedback too. And that really, that teaming helps to build those relationships. But I can't stress enough, know your why, make sure your colleagues are comfortable with that why, and then employ them in that way.
Can you give us one or two examples of specific lessons learned, either by you about Anil's company, about Enventure, or from that they learned about you?
Oh, well, so we talked about it before. The delegation, turns out that is a challenge for us. And what Anil and their group said was, you know, Mark, all we seem to do is put out your fires. You give us stuff last second, or it's really scattered, and it's, you know, it's hard for us to do it. There's really no consistency. How can we make that better? And, you know, again, when we really honestly looked at ourselves and were like, yeah, we struggle with that internally. We hear that from our PMs all the time. It really has helped us focus and find ways to intentionally, you know, make a difference there. And again, just describing that scope and having it well-defined, having the expectations well-defined. Once we do that, we get a much better product back. So,
you know, it's really interesting you mentioned that, because I know, talking with project managers in MEP firms, that's what they say about their architect clients, the same thing, right? You're always giving toast at the last minute, and so it's kind of interesting that now they're looking at the other direction, right?
Yeah, and one other thing again, so that folks understand kind of one of the arrangements we have with them, and again, how we change this to also help us internally look at it better. The 13 colleagues or engineers that we engage with them, we have them 100% of the time. So if we aren't giving them work, they are sitting over in India not doing anything. And that was another thing to say, hey, we don't like this churn. We don't like all the different names. Okay, well, if we do this, understand now we own a responsibility and we have to be way more structured and intentional of keeping them busy. And so Anil and Ryan Henderson, my COO, and others, they look at that utilization rate that we have. And so that's better to tell somebody, hey, we have someone over in India not working right now. Why aren't we using them? And then so when these reasons come out, we're like, okay, well, we've got to solve that, right? We don't want a resource sitting there not being used.
So it's almost like you have a 13-person branch office in India.
Yes. Yeah, and before Anil and his group absorbed that. And so for us, it was like, we didn't really care. And then, again, he had the courage to say, hey, Mark, this is a lot of inactivity for us to cover. And we're going to try and put them somewhere else. And then a week later, you want them back. That's really hard for us to manage internally. So, we really had to work hard on ourselves to be better.
Interesting. So I got one last question, and then we have a few questions that had popped up in the Q&A box. Anil, just tell if there's people that want to find out more about your services, what should they do next? Yeah, so they could very well contact me at my email address, which Adil, maybe you can pop it up there if you. It's Anil at. I'm not sure I can pop it up there, but I will put it in the. You can put it in the chat. I will put it in the chat. So Anil at Enventure.com. And maybe in the email, we can always send you the contact details as well. So, and, its website is www.enventure.com, enventure.com. And the email address is anil@enventure.com. Yeah, we just got it on the chat, so that was good. Okay, yeah. Well, your colleague was right on the ball there. Yeah. So. All right, well, let's see. So we have a comment from Jameson Spalding. Jameson, do you want me to just read it, or do you want to jump in and say it yourself? I don't know. Adele, can we unmute?
Yep. I can read it for you. Okay. Are you looking at the Q&A right now?
Yep, go ahead. Let's take Q&A.
Perfect. Okay. So the first question, how can a U.S. firm work on government projects with non-citizens?
You can't. So we have particular markets and sectors and services where we can use them, and then we have others where we cannot. So that is a challenge. You have to know that, you have to understand that, and kind of strategically plan for that. So and that's a challenge as globalization ebbs and flows and different legislation comes out. So you just have to be very aware of that, and then it's not a resource for that. And if that's predominantly what you do, that could be a challenge. For us, it's a component, and so we can use it in other markets in other ways.
Yeah, and just to add to that, some of our customers, what they do is, they move the American citizens that they have within the workforce into the government projects, and then for the release and then put people into the others. So when a new American project comes in, they would demobilize from their existing and then, put them into the government projects. And from some of the private projects, they give out the work back to us. So that's another way where, but government projects are strict keep out.
So,
for
Mark,
us.
is this only federal projects, or do you have that issue with some state and local government projects as well?
Some state and local. So yeah, it really sits at all of those levels. Certainly pay attention. Inflation Reduction Act, and the infrastructure, bill that's out there. And if you've got monies coming from those elements into the projects, just be aware of what constraints may be put upon those. So yeah, you have to be careful of that.
Good point. Do we have any other questions? Oh, wait, here we go. Yeah, here's one. Mark, how did you first learn about Anil and go about pricing the services versus others?
So I told you we had gone with I would say an American-based engineering firm at first. So that was our first foray, and so we struggled for different reasons to make that work. We kept going out and looking, and we came across Girish. He was in the U.S. for Enventure, and so they came over, and we kind of explained what we were doing. We really kicked the tires. We wanted to see their vision, mission statements. We went through kind of that predetermination phase. And once we felt like this is an organization with a similar culture, then we got back into looking at like I said, the rates. At first, we started off with just, hourly rates. And then we would use them on an hourly basis to where we are now. Every year we go through contract negotiations with them on how many engineers we want, and then, what are we going to pay them? And again, part of what we want to do is you can drive it if you want. And again, this is where I talk about the why. You can drive it and you can find very, low cost providers if you want. One of the things for us that we wanted to do is we really wanted to make sure that whatever we were using, number one, we want our colleagues to make a great living wage. Anybody that is associated with us, we want them to do that too, because again, it would be to us, it would be very hypocritical to have, folks really struggling in India, and we were using them and we negotiated it that way. So we really asked Anil and them, what do you find is the going rate over there? And then, we go and then we agree to those things. So we don't focus a ton on the cost. We really want the execution, and we just know the fiscal part typically isn't going to be a hurdle, especially the better we get in working together. It makes that an easier discussion.
Very good. Well, I think that brings our discussion to an end. Mark, Anil, thank you very much for a very enlightening discussion. I personally found it very informative, actually. So thank you for that.
Good.
Our audience likewise. Adele, any closing comments or anything we need to do to wrap up?
Yes, I am actually putting some contacts in the chat right now, and I also will be providing a link in just a minute. Other than that, thank you all so much for joining us today. We will be sending out an email with the webinar recording, and let's see, I just sent that, the webinar recording and a survey. And thank you so much to our presenters today. And other than that, if anyone else has any final words, feel free. And if not, thank you all so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.